Not many things in life are guaranteed, but as South African motorists, we can count on exactly 3 things. Potholes, getting cut off by a Quantum, and when you go for a drive, you will see a Citi Golf.
Discard!
No car has truly captured the South African imagination better than Volkswagen's humble hatchback. No matter one's race, class, or gender, everyone loves a Golf. That same energy can be witnessed at robot racing in Cape Town as yet another Citi Golf takes to the line. It can be seen in Gauteng as people send a Chico spinning across the road with the rear wheels locked up. It can be seen at every single university across this country as nervous first years roll into campus in their family's hand-me-down Volkswagen. It is extremely likely if you're a South African that you've either been driven in or have driven one yourself. They are so essential to the South African experience that when Volkswagen South Africa tried to kill the MK1 Golf for the Mark II, we as a country roundly rejected it and they kept producing the car for the next 3 decades. So what is it about this incredible little hatchback that makes it so special to this country? That is what we're here to find out. And unfortunately, to fully understand the lifespan of the Citi Golf, we have to go back to the Nazis. But I promise there is a reason for this. Ferdinand Porsche was tasked by the Nazis to create the first true people's car for the people of Germany. Thankfully, the Nazis failed at their bigger plan that they had going on, but the plan for the car prevailed, and that's how we got the Volkswagen Beetle. It went on to be produced for decades and decades and truly became the first global people's car. Now we need to fast forward to the early 70s. The Beetle had been selling absolutely phenomenally, but Volkswagen was still trying to create the successor to this truly iconic car. They'd actually been trying to create a successor to the Beetle for a number of years, including partnering with Porsche, no longer owned by the Nazi Party, but had ultimately kind of failed. But in the early 1970s, due to a multitude of factors, but one of them chiefly being the success of the Mini and the taste for small economical hatchbacks, VW finally decided to commit to this new A1 platform. They decided to hire the legendary Italian designer Giorgetto Giugiaro, which I hope I'm pronouncing correctly. He was a man truly known for pushing design in the early 70s, and he went on to create some truly iconic designs for many, many decades, chiefly among which he created the taste for wedge-shaped supercars, which we all know and love today. Giugiaro stuck to his futuristic angular design and created a very distinct, in my opinion, iconic shape. In a period where cars were still more bubble rather than box, it was a truly striking design, and it set the precedent for many, many, many decades of Volkswagen design. The Golf debuted in 1976 in Europe to enormous success, and later in America under the Rabbit name. It was just a very successful car because so many people resonated with the cheap, small, practical, economical, but striking design that the car came with. Volkswagen had finally replaced the Beetle and created a dynasty that we are still living in today. We're at the 8th generation of the Golf. Depending on whether you like the looks or not, it doesn't matter, because for decades this car has dominated. But that's not what we're concerned about here. We are concerned about the South African angle. So what has all this success got to do with our country? Volkswagen had actually been present in South Africa for a number of years at this point. They opened a Beetle factory in 1951 and had been producing the Beetle there both for local and for global markets. And I'm not sure how to feel about this because it is a company that was just come out of Nazi rule, creating a factory in a country that had just brought about apartheid in 1948 after hundreds of years of colonialism. Yeah, this is an aspect of the history that Volkswagen South Africa will never reference when they talk about their long, grand history in this country, but I digress. Volkswagen South Africa had the same impulses that the global market had and loved the Golf. We bought it in droves. The Mark I was actually particularly cheap in this country because we produced it locally. There were no shipping costs to add to the final price of the vehicle, and parts were made locally, so were readily available and could be acquired in record time. We loved it so much so that when the Mark II came out, we didn't really vibe with it. The Mark II was more expensive, and the question was, why buy a whole new car when there's one already working for us right now? no one really bought the Mark II in comparison to the numbers of the Mark I. So Volkswagen South Africa had a real problem on their hands. But they also had the solution. Since the factory already had the tooling to produce the Mark I, they thought, why not just keep producing the same thing that we've been producing already, which clearly has an enormous amount of desire for in the country with very little additional design costs. Some minor changes were made to the Golf to make it the new old Golf. They moved from offering a variety of body styles to just offering the 5-door, and sort of stripped away the sort of nicer aspects of the car, like chrome trim and stuff like that, just to keep the costs as low as possible. And finally, they revised the bumpers to give the car an updated face. The final problem was branding. Despite the fact that the car was very loved, it was still an old car. So how are you going to convince someone to buy a new old car? The external marketing team decided to lean into a trend that Volkswagen had used for many years with the Beetle, which is to lean into the sort of cute aesthetic and fun-loving angle associated with these small cars. To go along with this, the new Golf was originally released purely in the primary colors of red, yellow, and blue, allegedly inspired by the colorful changing rooms of Muizenberg Beach in Cape Town. The car needed a name. It was originally going to be called the O'Connor Golf because they wanted to lean into the cheapness of the car, but they finally decided on the Citi Golf to align with the sort of youthful, exuberant nature that they were imbuing this new car with. And finally, in 1984, South Africa was introduced to the Citi Golf. And we fucking loved it. Numbers are quite hard to track down when it comes to the Citi Golf, but it seems like between 270 and 370,000 Golfs were sold. That outpaces the Mark I Citi Golf in this country. And that is an enormous number of cars for a population of 60 million people. South Africans lapped up the new styling and marketing for the new car, but you also have to sort of consider the socio-economic policy at the time. Apartheid was absolutely destroying people of color in this period, and for someone with not a lot of disposable income, the Citi Golf was kind of perfect. It was a cheaper car, it was cool, it was reliable. Oftentimes this was one's first car or even a family's first car. The car was incredibly popular, and along with the Caddy that had come out a couple years before, the Golf got a couple of special editions here and there. At some moments increased the displacement to 1.4, 1.6, and upgraded the interior at certain moments. But when it came down to it, the Citi Golf over many, many decades always remained true to what it was supposed to be. The people's car. Because of how many Citi Golfs there were in this country, and because they were relatively cheap not only to buy but also to maintain, car lovers did what we did best, which is tinker and tweak the Golf to be exactly the car that we needed it to be. This has produced an enormous Citi Golf scene in this country, and it means that you can go from seeing a 1.8 IR with less than 100,000 kilometers and in pristine condition, all the way to going down to Killarney in Cape Town and seeing a completely clapped out, stripped Golf on the drag strip. The Golf lasted for many, many decades, and it is truly something to behold. But ultimately in 2009, Volkswagen decided to kill the Golf. Popular law will suggest that it's because of safety and emissions regulations, but the Golf had actually cleared these. The real problem came when it just started becoming way too expensive to keep producing the same thing over and over again, especially when the 2000s Polo had really crept into the market and really started taking hold. So what was really the purpose of producing two cars for the same segment? Volkswagen gave the Citi Golf a loving final send-off that I feel like any South African who bumped into a TV in the 2009 will have seen. They toured the Citi Golf around the country, getting people to brand the car with messages and memories of the times they'd spent with their Golf. The final car now sits in the VW Museum as a physical manifestation of the love this country has for this humble hatchback. So the next time you see a Golf in Cape Town, Kimberley, or KZN, just take a second to truly appreciate South Africa's people's car. Cool, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I have a deep love and appreciation for South African automotive anything, whether it be history or modern cars. I have been wanting to do this for a very long time, and I'm really excited to explore all the different facets of this country's automotive scene. So I'm not only going to be doing sort of history videos, I'm also wanting to do videos featuring people's cars that are particularly special or interested or modded or whatever. So if you have a car that you think is special or interesting or has a great story, there's going to be an email down in the description below. Just pop me an email and I'd love to see if we could make something happen. Yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I will check you in the next one.